and black responds with d5. So we get to that mainline dragon position, Yugoslav attack for white. And here, white castles queenside. So, as you'll recall, there are two standard responses for black, taking on d4 and following it up with bishop e6. And we saw a game that I played in that line in the last video. And the other main move for black here is d5, breaking open the center. So this video is going to be dedicated to talking about white's responses to this move d5 and how black should continue to get a good position. So here for white, there are three main moves. The most common move is to capture on d5, and as we'll see, there are a couple different ways that this line can be played. Another move, although less common, is queen e1, with the idea of getting the queen off the d-file so that this rook x-rays this queen and tries to give black some problems with his pawn on d5. And probably the second most common move, other than taking the pawn on d5, which a lot of people are playing right now, is king b1. And king b1 is a tricky move because now black can't take on e4 because knight takes c6 is winning for white. After queen takes d2, this intermediate move, knight takes e7 check, and white has an extra piece in its ending. So king b1 is becoming more and more common in this position. So let's start with e takes d5. And black responds knight takes d5, and white plays knight takes c6, b takes c6, and now there are two different options here for white. If he's feeling ambitious, he can take the pawn. I don't recommend this for white, and we'll see why. And the main line here is bishop d4, an attempt to simplify the position and play for a small edge for white. So let's see what happens if white gets greedy and takes the pawn. Looks pretty natural. Here, black wouldn't want to go to the endgame, a pawn down, but black has a very nice resource here. This is a good chance for you to pause the video and see if you can find the best move for black in this position.
Best move for black in this position?
The best move for black here is queen c7, avoiding the queen trade and putting pressure on white's king. If white takes the rook, it's not really a good idea because now bishop f5 threatening checkmate and attacking the queen. The queen is forced to take this rook on f8, and now black recaptures with the king, leaving his bishop attacking white's queen side. So black is threatening checkmate on c2, white has to stop it, bishop d3, and now queen e5, forking the bishop and this pawn on d2. Now white has a tricky idea. He goes bishop takes f5, and now after queen takes e3 check, king b1, and it's not possible for black to capture that bishop because rook d8 is made. However, black has a forced win in this position. Again, this is a good opportunity to pause the video, see if you can find the forced win for black. It's a very nice move that combines offense with defense. Queen b6, simultaneously threatening checkmate, guarding the checkmate on d8, and after white stops the checkmate with b3, now we can simply capture that bishop, and black has a winning material advantage.
Right.
So let's go back. Queen to see this position, take. Queen takes d5. Now after queen c7, there's another move for white that's better than taking the rook, although I still wouldn't recommend it. I still think black is a great position. But the other move for white is queen c5, once again trying to trade queens. And black still doesn't want to trade queens. He can play here queen b7 or queen b8. I recommend queen b7, which leaves the b8 square for the rook. So now black is threatening b2. White plays queen a3. Notice that here queen b5, again trying to trade queens is not a good idea because here black can simply exchange and follow it up with rook b8, skewering the pawn on b2. If white plays a4, black just goes a6 and kicks that bishop, and after black takes this pawn, black will be much better in this endgame. So instead of queen b5, white goes queen a3, and now black plays rook b8, renewing his threat on this pawn. White plays b3, and now a nice attacking move, bishop f5, putting pressure on c2. White plays very natural, bishop d3, and now with a series of very precise moves, black can get a great and nearly winning position. Here, either queen c7 or queen c6. It's not important which one, queen c7 or queen c6. White takes the bishop, and now surprisingly, black brings his queen into c3, threatening the bishop and with ideas of playing queen a1 check. But white has the simple response, bishop d3, solving all his problems, and it looks like now white is winning with his extra piece and extra pawn because it doesn't seem like black has any serious threats. However, this position is very misleading. It's actually close to winning for black after this excellent move, rook on d to c8, which completely paralyzes white's position. Here, black has the simple idea of playing rook d8 and capturing on d3, where, of course, if the white's rook recaptures, then there's checkmate on c2. How can white stop this idea? It's very difficult to stop. The d2 square can never be blocked because of queen a1 checkmate. That square has to remain open for the king. Someone tried one time rook e1, and then after rook d8, rook e2, in order to protect c2, but this failed to queen a1 check, king d2, and bishop c3 mate. Believe it or not, this position, after rook on b to c8, is very close to winning for black. Black is already much better. Okay, so let's return to this position after d5 on move 9, and let's see what happens if white takes on d5 and on c6, but then declines to take that extra pawn and rather goes bishop d4. This is a much better move. Here, it's a good idea for black to play e5. and key pieces on the board. White goes bishop c5, and now black can play either rook e8 or bishop e6, and I recommend bishop e6. Either way, it could easily transpose, but playing rook e8 gives white the option to go for this ending, knight takes d5, take, queen take, trade on d5. I think black is still fine here after bishop e6, and then after this rook moves, it's possible to take this pawn, because after b3, you can attack this bishop and be able to take this pawn on b3. But there's really no need to give white this option, because after bishop e6, taking this rook on f8 is poison. Here, trading white's dark square bishop allows black a very nice attacking plan to simply play rook b8, queen b4, e4, getting the bishop into the game, and white's queen side is a mess. That's a very bad position for white. And of course, bishop h6 with the pin here is also a threat. So white should never take this rook. The main move is knight e4, and now black plays rook e8. So this position should transpose. And here, there are three main moves for white, and I think the easiest way to remember how black should play this position is black has a response for every main move for white. The three main moves for white here are h4, g4, and bishop c4. Against h4, black should play h6, because white's idea is to play h5, and h6 allows black to meet h5 with g5, and here the pawns are blocked, and white's attack has been stymied. g4 has the problem of weakening this f4 square, and I think black should take advantage of that by playing knight f4. And here the ending is fine for black. After taking here, the knight is very well posted on f4. And if the queen moves away, now black can bring his queen out to a5 with a powerful attack. And bishop c4, which doesn't create any pawn weaknesses, can be met by the simple developing move queen c7. And now black's idea is to put his rooks on d8 and b8 and to continue attacking white's queen side. So after h4, black can play h6. And for example, at g4, it's still possible to play this move knight f4. Just remember black's response for each move for white. Okay, let's see this position after d5 if white plays queen e1. So queen e1, of course, prevents d takes e4 because of the simple knight takes e6 with a double attack on the queen. In my opinion, the best move for black here is e6, supporting the pawn on d5. White will usually continue h4, and now black can play queen c7. Time for black to develop his queen. I played queen a5 before in this position, but I'm not crazy about it because of a trick that white has sometimes. Like, usually here white plays h5, and here black probably needs to play rook e8. Let's say, for example, he plays something like bishop e7. Here it's sometimes an annoying idea to play h6, force the bishop to h8, and then capture on c6, and then capture on d5, which gives white a winning position because now the queens are facing, and white has this knight e7 checkmate. So after queen e1, e6, h4, I think this black queen is better placed here on c7. And now black's idea is to simply take on e4. He's ready to take on e4 and ruin white's pawn structure. And if white takes on d5, black can take with the pawn or with the knight. Probably take with the pawn and leave this knight to defend h7, although either one is okay. And now black is ready to sometimes trade this knight and play bishop e6 and continue with the normal attacking plan here. It's hard for white to attack with his queen on e1. The move that's being tried very commonly today here is king b1 on move 10. So king b1, as I mentioned earlier, prevents d takes e4 because knight takes e6, and then there's this intermediate capture on e7 with check. So after king b1, the main move for black is knight takes d4. And now after bishop takes d4, black can simply take on e4, ruin white's pawn structure, and black has a great position. So after knight takes d4, it's a very strange move that white played e5. e5 actually ignoring the extra piece that black has sitting on d4 and responding with a counterattack on this knight on f6. And after e5, black actually doesn't have any amazing saving move here. This move e5 holds up for white. It's a good move. And the best move for black is to play knight f5. So white has to recapture this piece. And here it's possible to take on f6 with either the bishop or the pawn. And I'm going to recommend taking with the pawn, although either is playable. After taking with the bishop, white takes on d5 with the knight, threatening knight takes f6, and taking the queen on d8. And here moving the bishop doesn't work because still knight f6, and white will take on d8. So after knight takes d5 here, it's necessary for black to sacrifice his queen. Queen takes d5. White recaptures, and now knight takes e3, forking the queen and the rook. Queen d2, black takes the rook, and after the dust settles, black has a rook and bishop for a queen, with some nice pressure in the center and sometimes on the queen side, although I don't feel like black has quite enough here for his material deficit. I feel like this position should be a little bit better for white. I played this position several years ago against Grandmaster Shabalov, and I made a bad move here. I couldn't remember if I was supposed to play bishop f5 or bishop e6, and I played bishop f5 thinking it was a logical move to put pressure on c2 and try to get my rooks in the center. But after this move, bishop c4, very accurate move, with the idea of playing bishop b3 and defending c2, my bishop became very bad on f5, and I lost this game. The better move here for black is bishop e6. And say, for example, after bishop d3, black's idea is to play rook d8, bishop f5, and take advantage of that pin. So even here, white should play bishop b5 with the idea of bishop a4 and bishop b3. Black will bring the rooks to the center, bishop a4, for example. And if black brings the rooks to the center, he can have a comfortable position. So it's a good idea, maybe instead of bishop a4, to play this move, rook d1, and try to activate white's rook instead. So this position is playable for black, but I believe it's a slight edge for white. Let's return to this position where I recommend playing e takes f6. And now the main move for white is bishop c5, and as promised, I'm going to be showing a brilliant game by Grandmaster Badur Jabava, who played black against Katerina Lanho, who I believe is a Grandmaster now, and she was an international master at this time. So Lanho was white, and this game went into the dragon. and Lano opted for the Yugoslav attack. And we got to this position after white castle queenside, and black responded with d5. So Lano played this move king d1, which seems to be getting played more and more. It's a good test against this d5 line. So Jababa played the main move knight takes d4, and Lano responded with this surprising-looking move e5, ignoring black's extra piece on d4 and counterattacking this knight on f6. And they continued to follow theory, knight f5, and e takes f6, and Jababa took on f6 with the pawn. And white played the main move, bishop c5, attacking this rook on f8. And it's very typical in the dragon for black to be more than willing to sacrifice a rook for white's dark square bishop, because that means that black's dragon bishop won't have an opponent, and black's dark squares can be extremely strong when attacking white's king. So this position is a classic example of that. Black plays d4, which is the main move here, daring white to take on f8. And she does. Bishop takes f8, and queen takes f8. So black has a pawn for the exchange and has these two bishops, which will work together very nicely. And white played knight e2 here, which was a novelty, and Jababa mentioned in his notes on this game that it was a novelty not too likely to have many followers after this game. The main move here is knight d5. So white continued knight e2, and black played knight e3, attacking the rook. Rook c1, and knight c4. This knight became very well placed on c4. Queen takes d4, why not be greedy? And now black needs to find a way to defend this knight on c4. Of course, he doesn't want to move it. He plays pawn to b5, defending that knight, and threatening f5, unleashing the bishop. There are those dark squares again, with that attack on b2. White played c3, denying the bishop some of the squares on that diagonal, and now bishop f5 check. Black plays forcing. King has to go to a1, and rook d8. Every black piece is in a useful spot. This knight on c4 is excellent. The bishop, of course, denying the king the b1 square. The queen and the rook coordinating well together. And this bishop on g7 hasn't seen the light of day yet, but it will. Queen f2, a passive-looking move. And now black continues with the active rook d2, taking control of the second rank and generating a threat against this pawn. Black is already much better. Queen takes a7. I don't think that white was so much interested in winning the pawn, but just getting this queen off of f2 so that this knight could return to the game. And Jababa played knight takes b2, stripping white's king of its shelter. Knight d4, and knight a4, putting pressure on this pawn on c3. White played knight takes b5, and it looks at first glance like maybe white is fine. White has a material advantage, and it seems like there's no clear way for black to continue. But Jababa had other plans, and he found an amazing move here for black. So why don't you pause the video and see if you can find this great continuation.
Amazing move for black.
Jababa found an incredible sacrifice. Knight takes c3, double exclamation mark. And this knight can't be taken either way. If the knight takes on c3, now black wins with queen b4, threatening an unstoppable checkmate. If white goes queen a8 check, simply bishop f8. And queen b2 is inevitable. And if rook takes c3, now it's rook d1, where king d2 is met by rook b1 checkmate. So after knight takes c3, white tried bishop c4. Knight takes b5 simply. Queen e3, it wasn't possible to take on b5 because, again, this queen b4 is forcing checkmate. So queen e3, attacking the rook. And now, after this very nice move, bishop d3, white resigns because white's coordination is completely shot, and black has the move f5 on the way, delivering a checkmate from this bishop, and there's no way to prevent it. For example, if queen takes c2, f5 check, rook c3 is forced, and now black wins the house after bishop takes c3. I hope you enjoyed that game. It was a very nice example of how to play this line for black after white plays king d1 in response to d5.
That's crazy, man. Boy. So how can white start a winning attack? I think this time.
Yeah, boy.
Checkmate. Crazy stuff. White has black has the initiative. White should block black. Black has the initiative. White should.
Huh? Bruh. Huh? Huh? Huh?
I'm Michael Jordan. Stop it. Get some help.
Nope. Nope. Bruh. Huh?
I mean, it's alright.
Huh? 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 Nope.
I mean, it's alright. I mean, it's alright.